I moved in with my dad when I was just a kid. I didn't know a single soul in the area, except for this one family he was close with. It was a single mom raising kids on her own. Fortunately, one of them was a girl just a couple of years older than me. She must have been around 13 or 14 when I first met her. Over the next couple of years, we got to know each other. Not too deeply, we were never inseparable or anything, but we shared mutual friends, and that was enough. One night, our friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother, just the three of them. They were alone in the house that night. Their mom was working a late shift again. She worked in home care and had recently started helping an older woman, someone she'd grown surprisingly close with. It turns out that woman had a sister who had spent time in a mental institution. Recently, she had been released. That night, as Rob sat on the couch with them, they heard a knock at the front door. Just a soft, rhythmic rapping. The kind of knock you'd dismiss if you weren't expecting someone. But it sounded familiar. My friend recognized it immediately. Their mom had a habit of knocking a certain way before coming inside. A little pattern. Tap, pause, tap, tap. Without thinking, he got up and opened the door. Rob wasn't supposed to be there. The second the door creaked open and he saw who stood on the other side, he bolted out the nearest window and sprinted down the road to his house without looking back. He never even hesitated. He thought it wasn't a big deal. But it wasn't their mom. It was her, the sister, the one who had just gotten out of the institution. She had managed to get all the details she needed by listening in on her sister's conversations. The family's name, their address, the mother's work schedule, everything. She came inside. What happened next? I only know fragments, and honestly, I'm thankful I don't know more. At some point, the younger brother slipped out and ran to the neighbor's place, terrified and barefoot, to call the police. But it was too late. By the time anyone arrived, my friend was already gone. It was a week before Christmas. They found her in the bathroom, her body naked, crumpled in the tub. Her head had been severed completely, brutally, with intention. Whoever found her said it was like something out of a nightmare. And it got worse. The killer had hidden her head. They couldn't find it. The police had to search through everything, even the wrapped Christmas presents, before they finally did. I don't know where it was. I don't want to know. Her funeral came and went, but I wasn't allowed to go. My dad thought it was better that way. Sometimes, even now, I wonder what would have happened if Rob hadn't answered the door, or if she hadn't been alone, or if the sister had never been released. But then, I remember the sound of that knock, the one that mimicked their mom so perfectly. And I wonder if it would have mattered at all. Even years later, long after the man was gone and her hand had finally stopped shaking, my wife's grandmother would still recount that winter night with a quiet bitterness. Not regret, no, never that. She knew she had done what she had to do, but there was always a sadness in her eyes, like she'd looked into something far more terrifying than just a would-be thief, something that had never quite left her. She used to say it wasn't the act of pulling the trigger that haunted her, it was how easy it was, how natural it had felt, like she hadn't even been the one doing it, like something inside her had taken over, something ancient and sharp and cold. That night marked a shift in her. At first, we thought it was just nerves. She stopped going to the library. She stopped volunteering. She'd glance over her shoulder when walking to the mailbox, even in broad daylight. Lights were always on, blinds always shut. She slept with the TV on low, some old black and white movie murmuring in the background like a protective spirit. Then, stranger things began to happen. She started talking about shadows, not ordinary ones, but shadows that moved on their own. In the hallway, under the dining table, behind her in the mirror. She said they would pause, hover, as if watching her, then vanish the moment she turned to look. We chalked it up to age at first, or trauma, maybe some delayed reaction to what had happened. But then we saw it too. Once, while helping her clean out a closet, I noticed her shadow didn't quite line up. Mine bent with the contours of the overhead light, but hers stretched too far, flickered ever so slightly, even though nothing in the room was moving. One night, she called my wife in tears, whispering into the phone like she was hiding. "He's back," she said. "Grandma, who?" She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice dropped low. "The man I shot, but not how I remember him. He's different now. His face isn't a face anymore. It's just wrong. Like it's trying to remember what a face is supposed to look like." After that, she moved in with us. We didn't really believe her, not entirely, but we didn't want her alone either. She was older now, slower, and whatever she thought she saw, it scared her deeply. Things calmed down for a while. She stopped mentioning the shadow man, started knitting again, even laughed a little. Until one evening, maybe a year before she passed, I found her standing completely still at the window. The sky outside was pink and orange, the trees casting long, lazy shadows across the yard. But she wasn't looking at the sunset. She was looking at the corner of the garden, where the light didn't quite reach, where a shape stood, tall, unmoving, just barely visible. When I asked her what she saw, she didn't speak. She only whispered, "He never left. I didn't kill him. I just woke him up." That night, she placed the small pistol she always carried onto the kitchen table and said nothing more. She never touched it again. In her final days, she wouldn't go near mirrors, wouldn't let us turn off the hallway lights. She'd sleep with her back to the wall, eyes fixed on the open door. And sometimes, just before drifting off, she would murmur something strange. "You should never fight something that's already dead," she'd say. "It has nothing left to lose." She passed in her sleep one spring morning, peaceful, quiet. But even now, when I'm alone in that house, I find myself checking the shadows, and I leave the porch light on, just in case something or someone is still making their way up the driveway.
We never saw it again. At least, not that SUV. But something about the way it vanished, like it had been waiting for a confrontation, and once it came, it simply moved on, left an itch beneath the skin that none of us could ever quite scratch away. For a while, things went back to normal, or as normal as they could be after something like that. My sister went on smoking, but she kept the habit strictly indoors now, always with a window cracked and a baseball bat leaning against the sill. She stopped going outside alone at night. My dad, cool-headed and steady as ever, didn't talk about it much, but he started leaving for work just a little earlier, coming home just a little later, sometimes with a tired look that didn't match the hours he claimed to be working. Months passed, maybe a year. I was getting older, starting to forget the details, until the night I woke up to the sound of gravel crunching in our driveway. It was just after 2 a.m. I sat up in bed, heart already pounding, before I even registered what I'd heard. There it was again, a slow, deliberate crunch. Crunch, crunch, like tires rolling gently across the loose gravel stones outside my window. I froze. From the gap in my curtain, I could see the faint glint of metal, a roof rack, and the unmistakable square silhouette of an SUV. Not white, this one was black, matte black, and still tinted so dark you could have mistaken the windows for obsidian. I held my breath. I don't know why. I wasn't sure if it could see me. But something about that car didn't feel like a coincidence. It didn't feel like a new one. It felt like the same driver, the same cold stare from behind glass I could never see through. I slid off my bed and crawled to the hallway, whispering for my dad. He was already up, gun in hand, fully dressed, like he'd been waiting for it. He didn't say anything to me, just gave me this slow nod, like he'd known it would come back. Not the same car, maybe, but the same thing. By the time he got to the porch, the SUV had vanished again. No lights, no sound, no sign of it on the road. Just a faint smell of burnt rubber and a swirl of dust still hanging in the air. My dad stood at the edge of the driveway for a long time, gun resting against his thigh, eyes fixed on the tree line across the street. Eventually, he came back inside, locked the door behind him, and turned to me. "You never saw a face, did you?" I shook my head. He just nodded. Me neither. That was the last time we saw the car, but strange things started happening around the neighborhood. Small things at first. A neighbor's dog vanished. Another family found their security cameras disabled, memory wiped clean. Someone broke into the church next door, but nothing was stolen. Just the altar cloth torn and the candles burned down to puddles. My sister moved out a year later, took a job out of state, and never looked back. She's got her own place now, a different life, but she still calls sometimes, usually late at night. She always starts the same way. "You seen it again?" And every time I tell her no. But I still keep the porch light on. And when the wind blows just right, quiet and low and mean, I swear, sometimes I hear tires on gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. After the police linned that second time, something shifted in my mom. She didn't sleep for 2 nights straight, just paced the living room in silence, clutching a kitchen knife in one hand and the cordless phone in the other. She didn't eat much, barely spoke. She'd stare down the hallway toward those 2 open bedrooms, her eyes scanning every shadow like she expected something or someone to step out at any moment. Eventually, she moved my mattress into her room and barricaded the bedroom door every night with a chair and a floor lamp wedged under the knob. I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I was still too young. I just knew our apartment didn't feel safe anymore. I'd flinch every time I heard the cat meow. But there were things I did notice, like how my mom started locking every interior door, even the bathroom, even the closets before bed. Or how she'd double-check the windows 3 or 4 times an hour, especially the one she'd thrown me out of that night. She kept it nailed shut after that, never opened it again. She'd started leaving the TV on when we slept, always tuned to some cooking show or late-night news broadcast. She said the noise helped her feel like we weren't alone, which I guess made sense, because maybe we weren't. One night, maybe a month later, I woke up and saw my mom sitting straight up in bed, rigid, eyes wide, breathing fast. I asked her what was wrong, and she hushed me, held a finger to her lips. Then I heard it too, the creak. That slow, unmistakable creak of a floorboard in the hallway. The one right in front of the linen closet. The one that always groaned when you stepped on it, but only if you stepped just right. The TV was still on. The cat was sleeping on the pillow beside me. But that creak, it wasn't the building settling. It was weight, footsteps. My mom didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the door like she was willing it to hold. Then it happened again. Creak, creak, closer this time. The doorknob jiggled once, gently, as if someone was testing it. That's when my mom whispered, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "He's inside." We stayed frozen like that until dawn. The moment the first light bled in through the blinds, my mom finally stood up. She unbarricaded the door, opened it slowly, and walked down the hallway, every step silent, every breath held. Nothing. No sign of a break-in, no missing items, no unlocked windows or disturbed furniture. Except one thing. The closet in the hallway, the one with the creaky board in front of it, was open just a crack. Not wide, barely an inch, but it had definitely been shut the night before. Inside, she found nothing. But from that day on, she never let me stay at that apartment again. She started taking me to my dad's for overnights, and within 2 months, she'd broken her lease and moved across town into a unit on the 3rd floor of a gated complex. No more first-floor windows, no more open hallways, no more creaking floorboards. But every once in a while, especially when I stayed over, we'd hear the cat hiss in the middle of the night, at nothing, at empty corners, at closed doors. And once, just once, I woke up to find her staring at the living room window. It was cracked open an inch, and we never opened those.
I thought that would be the end of it. A single weird moment in a dark basement. Maybe nerves, maybe an old pipe creaking in just the right way to trick my brain. That's what I wanted to believe. And for a while, it worked. Days passed, then weeks. I kept doing my laundry during the day, always checking to make sure all the lights worked. I avoided thinking about that laugh, the smoker witch sound that still made the hairs on my neck rise whenever I remembered it. I didn't tell anyone, not because I was scared of being laughed at, but because I was scared I wasn't imagining it. Saying it out loud would make it too real. Then one night, maybe 2 months later, I was home alone. Everyone else was out, my dad working late, my mom visiting her sister. I figured I'd get some chores done and maybe throw a load of towels in. It was just after 9 p.m. when I went down. The moment I opened the basement door, I felt it, that stillness. The kind that isn't just quiet, but expectant, like something's holding its breath, waiting. I shook it off, told myself not to be ridiculous. I turned on the laundry room light and descended the stairs. Everything was fine. I sorted the towels, started the wash cycle, and was halfway back up the steps when I heard it. Thump. A single, heavy footstep. Not behind me, not from the other side of the basement. Above me, in the hallway. I froze, heart immediately racing. Every part of me wanted to believe it was just the house settling, but then it came again. Thump, drag. Like someone taking a step with one foot and dragging the other. I couldn't breathe.
The basement door at the top of the stairs was closed, but I could see the hallway light under the crack. And then that light flickered. Not once, twice. I bolted back down into the basement, slammed the laundry room door shut, and locked it. I didn't even remember that door had a lock until that moment. I stood there in the humming warmth of the dryer, hands shaking, and pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. No footsteps, no laugh, no movement at all. Just silence. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 5 minutes, I opened the door. The hallway light upstairs was still on, still steady. But on the steps, halfway between me and the door to the upstairs hallway, was a single footprint. A black smudge like soot. No shoe tread, no sock marks. Just a bare human footprint. But it was too long. The toes looked warped, stretched, almost claw-like. I cleaned it before anyone got home, scrubbed it away like it would erase what happened. But the next morning, when I came down to switch the laundry over, there was another one on the inside of the laundry room door. That was the last load of laundry I did for almost a month. I started going to a laundromat across town, told my family the washer was acting up. My dad fiddled with it once and said it was fine, but I didn't care. I wasn't going back down there, not alone. Eventually, things calmed down again, or maybe I just convinced myself they did. But sometimes, when I lie in bed late at night, I swear I hear it again. That low, crackling cackle rising from beneath the floorboards. And when I do, I don't move. I just listen, and I pray the lights stay on.
Minji moved out the next day. She didn't even bother finishing the lease, left most of her things behind. Clothes, books, dishes, all of it. Packed a single suitcase with what she needed, locked the door behind her, and never looked back. For weeks after, she stayed with a cousin in a different part of the city. She barely spoke, barely slept. When she did sleep, she'd wake up gasping, hand instinctively reaching under the mattress. Her mind kept going back to that moment. The boy standing in her doorway, his wide eyes, the way he said, "I'm not hungry." The quiet terror in his voice. It wasn't just the fact that a stranger had been sleeping inches beneath her bed. It was the not knowing. How long had he been there? Had he watched her? Followed her? What had he planned to do? The police told her he was likely just a homeless man, maybe mentally unwell. They found a few personal items under the bed. A water bottle, a photo, a cigarette lighter, and a worn-out backpack filled with food wrappers and what looked like notebook pages. Pages filled with numbers, lists of dates, times. The handwriting was jagged. Some entries were scratched out violently, as if he'd changed his mind about something last minute. There were also drawings, crude, almost childlike sketches, of a small room, a bed, a woman lying in it. Sometimes she was smiling, sometimes she wasn't. Minji tried not to think about what that meant. She stayed away from tutoring for a while. The boy, she never saw him again. His parents transferred him to a different tutor almost immediately. They didn't want him involved in anything like this. Understandable. But every so often, Minji would think about him. How he didn't panic, how he woke her up calmly, how he convinced her to leave without giving anything away. He saved her life. Eventually, Minji found a new apartment. Top floor, multiple locks, no storage underneath the bed. She got rid of her bed frame completely. Just a mattress on the floor now.
Nothing below, nothing to hide. But the fear didn't go away. Sometimes, when she turns off the lights at night and the room goes quiet, she swears she hears breathing that isn't hers. Not loud, not close, just beneath. And she keeps a flashlight by her pillow, not for the dark, for checking under things.
I didn't sleep that night. I checked into a motel just outside Flagstaff, but all I could do was sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the cheap wood grain nightstand like it might blink at me. My hands were still trembling. I could feel the vibration in my bones, like I hadn't quite come back from that stretch of desert. That place. I kept replaying it in my head, second by second. The way the bodies moved, the unnatural coordination of it, like they'd been waiting for a cue. The way the grass shifted, not just from wind, but from movement. Deliberate movement, silent, organized. I knew what I saw. I just didn't know what it was. Part of me wanted to believe it was a mirage, a heat-induced hallucination, maybe. But 20 people rising from the grass like that? That doesn't happen in the heat. That doesn't happen by accident. I called the sheriff's department in San Bernardino County anonymously and told them what I saw. They didn't say much, took the report, asked for a rough location, thanked me, and that was that. But the next day, I checked the news. Nothing. No reports of missing persons. No mention of a red Pontiac Fiero abandoned on a canyon pass. No suspicious activity. No anything. It was like it hadn't happened. But I knew it had. I knew it every time I closed my eyes and saw the sun flashing off that red paint. The lifeless bodies sprawled just a little too perfectly. The tall grass parting like a curtain around a stage. And I knew it again 3 days later when I stopped for gas outside Gallup. As I walked inside to pay, there was a man leaning against the ice machine. Thin, sun-baked, grimy denim jacket zipped up all the way to his chin, even though it had to be close to 95 degrees. He was staring at me. Not like he recognized me, more like he wasn't sure yet. Like he was matching something in his head to what he saw in front of him. I looked away, paid for my gas. When I came back out, he was gone. But in the dust on the passenger side of my windshield, someone had dragged their finger from top to bottom. Just one line. Slow, precise, like marking a tally. I didn't report that, didn't tell anyone. I just got in my car and drove, kept driving. Never took that shortcut again. Never even thought about that part of California if I could help it. But sometimes, especially when I'm passing through a stretch of nowhere, one of those long, empty roads where the silence presses against the glass, I glance into the rearview mirror, and I half expect to see the Fiero again, parked across both lanes, waiting. We didn't talk much on the ride back, not for lack of trying. Someone would start to say something, maybe a nervous joke or half-formed theory, but it would trail off, swallowed by the weight of what we'd just heard. There was no explanation that made sense, no animal we could blame it on, no prank that could sound that human and that wrong. The kind of sound that feels like it's not just hitting your ears, it's digging into them. We all went home. No one slept. By the next afternoon, we started texting each other, trying to piece it together. What did you see? What did you hear? Could it have been a mountain lion? A bobcat? Someone mentioned maybe it was a person on something, having a breakdown in the woods. But the timing, the placement of the screams, it felt orchestrated. And that third one? That wasn't across the river anymore. That was with us. Still, we tried to move on. The next few weekends passed quietly. We went fishing in new spots, different places, far from the riverbank. No one mentioned going back. Nobody wanted to be the first one to suggest it, and none of us were eager to call each other cowards either. But then, about a month later, one of the guys, Derek, texts us a photo. It's from the James River Trail Cam Facebook group. Hikers and nature people post wildlife shots from the area. His message just said, "Recognize this spot?" And yeah, we did. It was the same bend in the river where we'd been that night. Same jagged rocks, same slope where we built the fire. In the photo, the trail cam had captured what looked like a person, except it wasn't right. The figure was crouched low, arms long and bent at strange angles, skin too pale against the darkness. No clothing, no details, just that form, frozen mid-movement, head slightly tilted, watching. And its eyes, they caught the camera flash just wrong. Too many reflections. We all stared at it for a long time. No one said a word. The next day, Derek went back out there. He didn't tell us until he was already on his way. Said he was just checking it out, that it had to be fake or some trick of light. Maybe someone knew we'd been out there and was messing with us. But then we didn't hear from him. Hours passed, then night, then a full day. By the time his wife called us in a panic, the police were already involved. They found his truck parked near the trail entrance, keys still in the ignition, door wide open. No sign of Derek. No blood, no struggle, just his flashlight lying on the riverbank, still on, still flickering. The only clue they found was a torn piece of his flannel jacket caught high in a tree branch, almost 12 feet off the ground. None of us have gone back. The campsite's still there. Our gear, probably long gone, or picked clean by weather and animals. But none of that matters. Because sometimes, late at night, when the wind's just right, I still hear it. That scream. Not just in memory, outside. Somewhere in the woods behind my house. And it's getting closer.
The cops swept through the house, top to bottom. Closets, crawl space, attic, under the beds, everywhere. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken. But nothing felt right either. Every room suddenly seemed darker, heavier, like the air had thickened and sunk into the walls. One officer tried to reassure me. Probably just a drifter, saw an opportunity, got spooked when you came home. But he didn't sound convinced. They left about an hour later, said to keep the doors locked, install a camera, maybe get a dog. Basic advice, but it felt useless, because it wasn't what they didn't find that scared me. It was what they might have missed. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept the lights on in every room and sat on the couch with a baseball bat and my dad's old hunting knife. Every tiny sound, the creak of the pipes, the ticking of the old wall clock, the rustle of the tree outside, made my heart skip. I kept thinking about the phone call, the silence, that someone had picked up in my house. But it got worse. The next morning, I found my phone. It wasn't outside, it wasn't lost in the car. It was sitting in the middle of the hallway, screen down, perfectly centered, as if it had been placed there. I picked it up like it might burn me. The screen was smudged, but not with dirt or dust. It looked like grease. Faint fingerprints across the edges, too big to be mine. I went to plug it in and check for messages, but the battery was already at 72%. That meant someone had plugged it in. Someone had kept it charged. I opened the camera roll. My hands were shaking. The last photo was taken the night before, time-stamped at 8:41 p.m., the same time I had borrowed my friend's phone to call it. It was a blurry shot, like it had been taken quickly without aiming. But it wasn't a picture of the room or the floor. It was a photo of a face. Half-lit, shadowy, just eyes and the edge of a mouth, grinning. And it wasn't anyone I knew. I deleted the photo, deleted everything, reset the phone. But it didn't help. The image was burned into my brain like an after image from staring at the sun. I begged my parents to change the locks. We got a security system installed the next day. Motion sensors, window alarms, cameras at every entrance. But that night, I still couldn't sleep. At exactly 8:41 p.m., my phone lit up with a notification. Unknown device attempting to connect via Bluetooth. I turned off the phone. I don't use Bluetooth anymore.
They arrested him on the spot. He didn't resist, didn't say a word, just smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're nervous or ashamed. No, this was calm, content, like he'd been waiting for someone to come in and find him, like this was part of the plan all along. I stood there, shotgun still in my hands, barely registering the words the sheriff was saying. My daughter's closet. A setup, a blanket, food wrappers, a flashlight, a small, cheap notebook. He'd been hiding in there, watching her. For how long? That part still keeps me up at night. The deputies kept the scene locked down while they called in a crime scene unit. I wasn't allowed back inside for hours. My wife rushed back from her mother's, completely losing it when she found out what had happened. My daughter, thank God, hadn't been there. But if she had been, that thought still claws at me. Later that morning, one of the deputies came to me with the notebook they'd found in the closet. He said I didn't have to see it, but I did. It was filled with entries, scratched handwriting, pages and pages of obsessive thoughts, most of them centered around my daughter. She looks at the stars and hums sometimes. She puts her socks on one foot at a time, left first. She cried when the thunder started. She has the softest voice when she sings. Tomorrow, I'll say hi again. The last entry was just 2 words, written in all caps and circled over and over. Soon night. After they took him away, the neighborhood changed. Nobody let their kids walk alone anymore. People kept porch lights on all night, even the ones who used to complain about bugs. And his parents, they moved out within a month. No notice, no goodbye. I ripped out the closet in my daughter's room, every board, every hinge. I turned it into open shelving. She got a new room across the hall, and we never called it the old room again. We just didn't talk about it. But sometimes I catch her staring out her window at night, just watching. I asked her once what she was looking at. She didn't say anything right away. Then, finally, in a quiet voice, she said, "Just making sure he's not coming back." I told her he was locked up, that he wouldn't ever hurt her. But I check the windows every night now. And sometimes, when the moon is bright and the wind hits the trees just right, the shadows on the street move a little too slowly for my liking. And I swear, once I saw one stop and look up.